War in the ancient world wasn't won by numbers alone. It was won in the mind long before the first sword ever struck. Empires like Rome understood this better than anyone. Their legions were engineered for dominance. Disciplined ranks, interlocking shields, layers of iron and steel designed to turn chaos into control. To face a Roman army was to face a machine, predictable, relentless, and nearly impossible to break. But in the summer of 634 AD, something happened that didn't fit into Rome's logic of war. On a sun-scorched battlefield in the Middle East, that machine encountered something it could not calculate, something it could not intimidate. It wasn't a new weapon. It wasn't a clever formation or a hidden ambush. It was a single man. He didn't advance with armor. He didn't hide behind a shield wall. Instead, he rode forward alone and challenged an empire. At first, it looked like madness. Then the first champion fell. Then another. And another. What began as a curiosity turned into something far more dangerous. A crack in the psychological foundation of one of the most powerful armies on Earth. Because when a soldier stops fearing death, he becomes something else entirely. And when an army sees a man who has already given up everything, wealth, status, even his own survival, it doesn't just face an opponent. It faces a force it cannot understand. They would come to call him something unforgettable. The naked champion. Long before he became a figure whispered about on the battlefield, Dhirarr ibn al-Azwar was born into a world defined by privilege, power, and prestige. He came from the Banu Asad tribe, one of the most respected and influential tribes in Central Arabia. In a society where lineage shaped destiny, Dhirarr didn't just inherit a name, he inherited status. He was raised among leaders, warriors, and poets, in a culture where honor was currency and reputation could outlive a lifetime. By every measurable standard of his time, he had already made it. He possessed immense wealth, reportedly owning vast herds of camels, an asset that, in the desert economy, was equivalent to generational financial security. His life was comfortable, even luxurious by the standards of the era. Fine garments, social influence, and the admiration of his peers were all within reach. And beyond his material success, Dhirarr embodied another ideal deeply respected in Arabian culture. He was both a warrior and a poet. He could command attention with his words just as easily as he could command fear with a blade. If you were to look at his life from the outside, there would be no reason to expect change. He had everything most people spend their entire lives chasing: status, wealth, identity, and belonging. But then came a decision that would redefine everything. When the message of Islam reached him, it wasn't just another idea in a marketplace of beliefs. It struck something deeper. Dhirarr didn't approach it cautiously or strategically. He didn't negotiate with it. He embraced it fully, and in doing so, he made a choice that, by any rational standard, made no sense at all. He walked away from everything. Not symbolically. Not partially. Completely. He gave up his wealth, distributed his possessions, and severed ties with the very lifestyle that had once defined him. The comfort, the prestige, the identity he had built over years, he abandoned it in pursuit of something intangible, something eternal. To the outside world, especially to those who shared his former status, it was baffling. Why would a man at the top willingly step down? But that question misses the point. Because what Dhirarr gained wasn't something you could measure in assets or influence. It was freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from attachment. Freedom from the one thing that controls most human behavior: the instinct to preserve what we have. For many, the fear of loss dictates every decision. The fear of losing wealth, reputation, security, even life itself. But Dhirarr had already let go of all of it. By the time he stepped onto a battlefield, there was nothing left to take from him. And that changed everything. This wasn't just a religious conversion. It was a psychological transformation. He no longer fought for survival. He didn't fight for recognition or reward. In a world where soldiers often calculated risk versus gain, Dhirarr operated on an entirely different axis. He had already accepted the ultimate cost. Imagine facing an opponent like that. A man who doesn't hesitate, a man who doesn't flinch, a man who has already made peace with death before the fight even begins. That kind of mindset doesn't just make someone dangerous, it makes them unpredictable. And in warfare, unpredictability is often more powerful than strength. This is the key to understanding why Dhirarr ibn al-Azwar would later become something far greater than just another skilled warrior. His fearlessness wasn't reckless. It was rooted in a complete detachment from the things most people cling to. While others stepped onto the battlefield hoping to survive, he stepped onto it already prepared for the end. And that difference, subtle on the surface, but profound in impact, is what would eventually turn him into a weapon unlike anything the Roman army had ever faced. Dhirarr ibn al-Azwar did not become a legend overnight. His transformation into one of the most feared warriors on the battlefield was forged in a series of brutal, unforgiving conflicts that tested not just his skill, but the very core of his identity. These were not wars of expansion or glory, they were wars of survival, fought in the immediate aftermath of a fragile and uncertain moment in history. The Ridda Wars, often overlooked in popular history, were among the most intense internal conflicts of early Arabia. Following the death of the Prophet Muhammad, the region fractured. Tribes that had once pledged allegiance began to rebel, alliances collapsed, and the Arabian Peninsula teetered on the edge of chaos. This wasn't a distant or abstract war for Dhirarr, it was personal. The lines between friend and enemy blurred, and in some cases, vanished entirely. One of the defining moments came at the Battle of Buzaka. Here, Dhirarr faced a reality few warriors ever encounter. He stood on the battlefield against his own people. The Banu Asad, his tribe, had aligned with the rebellion. This was more than a military engagement, it was a test of conviction. And Dhirarr did not hesitate. He chose principle over blood, commitment over comfort. In doing so, he proved something critical, not just to others, but to himself. His transformation was complete. There was no going back. But Buzaka was only the beginning. The crucible that truly shaped Dhirarr into a weapon came at the Battle of Yamama, one of the bloodiest and most chaotic battles of the era. This was not a clean, strategic engagement fought at a distance. It was close, suffocating, and relentless. Soldiers fought in tight formations, often face-to-face, where every movement meant life or death. There was no room for hesitation, no space for fear to hide. In that kind of environment, raw courage alone isn't enough. You need control, precision, and an almost instinctive understanding of violence. And this is where Dhirarr began to stand out. He wasn't just aggressive, he was effective. He moved with purpose, striking with speed and accuracy, cutting through the chaos with a level of clarity that others struggled to maintain. While many fought to survive, Dhirarr fought as if survival was no longer part of the equation. And someone was watching. Khalid ibn al-Walid, one of the most brilliant military commanders in history, had a unique ability to recognize talent. Not just skill, but potential. He didn't just see a warrior in Dhirarr, he saw something far more valuable. He saw a psychological advantage. Khalid understood a fundamental truth about warfare. Battles are often decided before they begin. Morale, perception, fear. These invisible forces can shape outcomes just as much as swords and shields. And Dhirarr, with his complete disregard for death and his relentless intensity, had the potential to influence all of them. So Khalid made a strategic decision. He began to organize a specialized group within his forces, an elite unit known as the Mubarizan, or the Champions. These were not ordinary soldiers. Their role was highly specific and incredibly dangerous. Before the main armies clashed, they would step forward into no man's land and challenge the enemy's best warriors to single combat. This wasn't just tradition, it was strategy. When an army watches its strongest fighters fall, one by one, in front of thousands of witnesses, something shifts. Confidence erodes. Doubt creeps in. Discipline starts to crack. The battle hasn't even started, but the outcome is already being influenced. And at the center of this strategy, Khalid placed Dhirarr. Not because he was the strongest, not because he was the fastest, but because he was the most psychologically disruptive presence on the field. Dhirarr didn't just defeat opponents, he unsettled entire formations. His willingness to step forward, alone, without hesitation, created a ripple effect that extended far beyond the individual duels. He became a signal, a message sent directly into the enemy's mind. If this is what one man can do, what happens when the rest follow? By the time the campaigns in Syria began, Dhirarr ibn al-Azwar was no longer just a warrior shaped by war. He had become something far more dangerous, a weapon designed to break not just bodies, but belief itself. By the time the two armies met on the plains of Ajnadain, the outcome should have been predictable. On one side stood the Byzantine forces, disciplined, heavily armored, and numerically superior, with estimates placing their strength at nearly twice that of their opponent. They formed a wall of iron and order, shields locked, spears angled forward, a system perfected over centuries of warfare. This was not just an army. It was a machine designed to absorb impact and crush resistance. Facing them was a smaller, faster, and far less armored force. Under the command of Khalid ibn al-Walid, the Muslim army understood that a direct collision would be suicide. They couldn't outmatch Rome in brute strength, but they didn't need to. Khalid wasn't looking to break the Roman line physically. He was looking to break it psychologically. And for that, he had already chosen his weapon. Before the main battle began, a single rider moved forward into the empty space between the two armies. No formation, no backup, just one man riding toward thousands. It was Dhirarr ibn al-Azwar. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He paced along the Roman line, just outside arrow range, his presence alone a provocation. To the Roman officers, this wasn't strategy, it was an insult. A lone warrior challenging the might of an empire. For a moment, discipline held. Then pride took over. A Roman champion stepped forward. Clad in layered armor, shield raised, sword ready, he represented everything Rome believed made a soldier superior. The duel that followed was brief and violent. The Roman relied on strength and protection. Dhirarr relied on speed and precision. Within moments, the champion fell. Then another stepped forward. And another. Each time, the result was the same. What began as a test of honor quickly turned into something far more dangerous. The Roman front line, once steady and controlled, began to shift. Soldiers watched their best fighters fall one after another, not in a prolonged struggle, but almost effortlessly. Confidence started to erode. The machine was beginning to hesitate. And then Dhirarr did something no one could have anticipated. Standing over the bodies of fallen opponents, under the relentless heat of the Syrian sun, he paused. Not to rest, but to remove his armor. First the helmet, then the chainmail. Piece by piece, he stripped away the very thing every Roman soldier depended on for survival. Until he stood there, bare-chested, exposed, holding nothing but a shield and a bloodied sword. To the Roman mind, this wasn't bravery. It was insanity. Armor was life. Protection was survival. And yet here was a man discarding both, as if they were a burden rather than a necessity. The message was unmistakable. He did not need protection. He did not fear death. In that moment, the battlefield changed. What the Romans were facing no longer fit into any framework they understood. This wasn't just a skilled opponent. It was a psychological rupture. A man who willingly removed his own defenses after killing multiple champions was not just dangerous. He was incomprehensible. The effect spread quickly. Whispers moved through the ranks. Formations tightened, not out of confidence, but out of uncertainty. The idea of facing such an opponent began to weigh on the soldiers before the battle had even begun. Desperate to regain control, the Roman command made a critical mistake. Instead of sending one champion, they sent several at once, breaking the very rules of engagement that had governed these pre-battle duels. It was no longer about honor. It was about stopping him. But that decision only made things worse. As multiple armored warriors charged forward, the situation exploded into chaos. Khalid responded instantly, sending his own elite fighters to intercept. What followed was no longer a duel. It was a violent, close-quarters clash in the center of no man's land. And in the middle of it all, Dhirarr moved like a force unrestrained. Without the weight of armor, he was faster, more fluid, striking with a level of precision that seemed almost unnatural. While others fought to defend, he fought to end. One by one, the Roman officers fell again, this time not just defeated, but overwhelmed. When the dust settled, the damage was already done. Dozens of experienced Roman leaders lay dead before the main battle had even begun. But more importantly, something invisible had been shattered. The confidence that held the Roman formation together, the belief in their superiority, was gone. Khalid saw it immediately. The line hadn't broken physically, but mentally, it was already collapsing. And that was the moment he had been waiting for. Because once an army loses its belief in victory, the rest is just a matter of time. Victory at Ajnadayn didn't mark the end of Dhirarr ibn al-Azwar's story, it elevated him. What had once been raw, undeniable intensity on the battlefield was now recognized as something far more valuable: leadership. Khalid ibn al-Walid understood that Dhirarr was no longer just a duelist or a symbol of fear, he was an asset capable of shaping entire engagements. So he was promoted, placed in command of fast-moving cavalry units tasked with scouting, striking, and disrupting enemy positions deep behind the front lines. This new role demanded more than courage. It required awareness, timing, and the ability to read the battlefield as it evolved. And for a time, Dhirarr thrived. He led aggressive raids, hunted down retreating Byzantine forces, and pushed further into hostile territory than most commanders would dare. His reputation only grew, no longer just the naked champion, but a relentless cavalry leader who operated on the edge of control. But that same relentless nature carried risk. In the chaos of the Syrian campaign, where terrain shifted from open plains to narrow corridors and hidden valleys, information was everything. And one day, pushing forward with a small scouting force, Dhirarr went too far. What appeared to be an opportunity, a chance to intercept enemy movement, was, in reality, a trap. The ambush was sudden and overwhelming. Byzantine heavy cavalry surged from concealed positions, cutting off any path of retreat. Their armor gleamed under the sun, their formation tight and coordinated. Dhirarr's unit, lighter and outnumbered, was immediately at a disadvantage. Any conventional commander would have pulled back, preserved what remained, and reported the threat. Dhirarr did the opposite. He charged, straight into the center of the formation. For a moment, it worked. His speed and aggression disrupted the initial assault. He carved through the front line, creating space, buying time. But numbers have their own gravity. The Byzantine forces closed in, adapting quickly, surrounding him from all sides. His horse was struck down. The momentum broke. And then, for the first time, Dhirarr was taken alive. The decision wasn't accidental. The Byzantines knew exactly who he was. This wasn't just another captured officer. This was the man who had shattered their morale at Ajnadayn. Killing him on the field would have been a loss of opportunity. Capturing him, displaying him, turning his legend into a symbol of defeat, that was far more valuable. Word spread quickly. When news reached Khalid's camp, the reaction was immediate. There was no hesitation, no deliberation. A rescue force was assembled on the spot. Speed was critical. Every moment increased the chance that Dhirarr would be transported deeper into fortified territory where extraction would be nearly impossible. Khalid led the charge himself. The pursuit was fast, aggressive, and relentless. As his cavalry closed in on the Byzantine column, the clash erupted with explosive force. Dust filled the air, steel met steel, and the battlefield once again descended into chaos. But in the midst of that chaos, something unexpected emerged. A single rider, moving ahead of the main force, cutting through enemy lines with a level of intensity that immediately drew attention. This wasn't controlled, measured combat. It was raw, focused, almost unstoppable. The rider didn't fall back, didn't regroup, just kept pushing forward, deeper into the most dangerous part of the fight. Khalid noticed. He moved closer, trying to identify this unknown warrior who seemed to be dismantling the Byzantine formation piece by piece. There was no hesitation, no fear, only purpose. Again and again, the rider struck, creating a path directly toward the center of the enemy formation. Finally, in a brief pause between clashes, Khalid called out, demanding to know who this fighter was. The rider turned, and in that moment, the truth was revealed. It wasn't a veteran commander. It wasn't a legendary warrior from another tribe. It was a woman, Khalid ibn al-Azwar, Dhirarr's own sister. When she had heard of his capture, she didn't wait. She didn't ask for permission. She armed herself, mounted a horse, and rode straight into the battlefield to bring him back. Her presence wasn't just unexpected, it was transformative. The intensity she brought into the fight reignited the entire force. What followed was decisive. Inspired by her determination, the cavalry surged forward with renewed aggression. The Byzantine formation, already under pressure, began to collapse. Coordination broke down. Units scattered. The attempt to transport a high-value prisoner turned into a liability. And in the end, they abandoned him. Dhirarr was found alive, bound in chains, but unbroken. When he was freed, there was no moment of relief, no pause to recover. He didn't step back from the fight. He stepped directly back into it. A weapon once removed from the battlefield had been returned, sharper than before. And if anything, his legend had just grown stronger. In the end, the story of Dhirarr ibn al-Azwar is not just about a warrior who fought without armor. It's about a principle that still applies far beyond the battlefield. The greatest victories are often decided long before the first move is made. They begin in the mind. While armies invest in strength, numbers, and technology, history repeatedly shows that belief, fear, and perception can outweigh them all. Dhirarr understood something most never will. When you remove the fear of loss, you become incredibly difficult to defeat. He didn't rely on protection, status, or even survival. He operated from a place of complete detachment, and that made him unpredictable, disruptive, and ultimately unstoppable in ways his enemies couldn't comprehend. He wasn't just fighting battles, he was rewriting the psychological rules of warfare. That's why his legacy endures, not just as a soldier but as a symbol. A reminder that true power doesn't always come from what you have, but from what you're no longer afraid to lose. For modern audiences, entrepreneurs, creators, builders, there's something deeper here. Every meaningful pursuit comes with risk, uncertainty, and pressure. And the ones who move forward despite that, who act with clarity while others hesitate, are often the ones who change the game entirely. Dhirarr's story isn't about the past. It's about mindset. If you found this story valuable and you want more deep, powerful breakdowns of history's greatest warriors and strategies, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel is built for those who think differently, who want to learn not just what happened, but why it mattered. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't what you hold in your hand. It's what you've already let go of.